Everybody, and welcome to our regular Monday stream. Um, Apologies if I sound a little bit weird. I'm still a bit sick, so I don't know, my voice is a little bit monotone at the moment. But we are back. We couldn't stream on Thursday because I was very much too sick on Thursday.
Mhm.
But we do soldier on, and I think we've managed to get a better idea for at least a Monday stream anyway.
Yeah, this might be, I don't know. We will try and keep this as brief as we can because there's like loads and loads of stuff, but it's kind of something you've just kind of tided yourself over with during the weekend. And yes, there was lots of it, but as ever, we will try and be efficient with everyone's time because we know,
Yes.
not everyone has 3-4 hours to sit and listen to massive streams all the time. I know I don't, so
No,
I
we'll
appreciate
try and
when
keep
stuff is
this.
brief. So I will also briefly say we are doing Nomos events as per usual. We'll be doing our thing in London on the 28th and 29th. However, the 28th, I believe, is sold out for the early
See,
bird
that sold
tickets.
out last sold out like a week and a half ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just have the tickets left for the Saturday, which I don't know how many we were at now, but last time we discussed it, you said they were selling quite well still and have been doing so for the last week. So I can't imagine there's too many left.
There was a few. The thing is, we set the numbers quite high this time, so we have
Mm.
headroom. We're currently at about what we had last time, and we still have a couple of weeks to go.
That's good. And then on top of that, thank you to all the people who are channel members and regular viewers and
Yes.
people who are following along with the +1 for the algorithm gods and whatnot in the chat and the comments to keep the streams alive. That's
The
handy.
interaction is actually, I can actually see it helping.
Yeah,
It's funny.
no, you were saying earlier on that a lot of people seem to be getting this served live compared to before, so it's
They
always
do
good.
tick up. It varies. It does definitely vary. I think we got relatively lucky last week. The stream seemed to be very well received. People were very nice about it. I got a lot of messages, so thank you guys.
Yes.
We always have very positive interactions because I
Well, no,
think it's
I think it was Horace on Telegram who shared the stream, and a few people actually commented that they were coming over from there. So
yes.
maybe that's someone we could think about having a chat with at some point. He seems to have some similar interests as we do.
He seems pretty switched on. I was going to say that yes, we had a couple of recommendations, but welcome to everybody. Welcome to our regular viewers. As always, the normal YouTube stuff applies. We're still monetized, so if you want to ask questions, they'll be answered on air. We do read the chat, but the best way to guarantee it is to send either a super chat or a Streamlabs donation.
Hmm.
Streamlabs is still the best way to donate to us because they take the lowest cut.
Uh,
We also have memberships, and we have you can send super stickers and stuff like that too. Basically, all the YouTube monetization stuff.
yes, we very
So
much appreciate the donations and super chats and whatnot, as it allows us to basically justify doing all this stuff. I'll chuck the
yes,
Streamlabs link in the
do that.
chat.
Yes, I think we've got all the normal stuff out of the way now.
I will say one quick thing as well. There is a certain entertainer of a certain ethnicity in America who's all over the news at the moment, and we will not be mentioning him whatsoever.
No, that is a very bizarre distraction.
Instead, we're going to talk about the thing that's people. I mean, I've seen people mentioning. We might as well get into what we're talking about. We
Yes,
discussed it before, the online harms bill. We looked at the white paper for it. We picked up bits and pieces here and there of when it was going through Parliament. And there is some stuff I think we missed, to be totally fair. And I think there's some stuff that other people
oh,
have missed as well, because there is this now sort of on the face of it 180 where the online harms bill is now the online safety bill, but it actually was in a previous incarnation before the online harms bill, which people will know of. They just haven't drawn the link between the two. But you've sort of put enough stuff together here that we can do
it's a
so.
big
So
shell game.
I'll allow you to go on.
It's for those of you who don't know that we're going to be talking about British politics again. In the vein that we did the policing bill, we did the crime bill. Both of those were very, very potent piece of legislation that did end up passing, that were very negative, and whose effects haven't been felt fully yet from them. You can go back and look at our videos on those, the crime bill and the policing bill. We went through them in relative detail. we'll try and keep this entertaining because there's a lot of stuff that's ridiculous in here, especially when we get to one of these simplified explainers they have. It's quite impressive, the simplified way that they try to explain this to people. There's some very much aimed at like 80 IQ stuff in here, which is it's very mask off because I don't think they're expecting people like us to find it
No,
because it's
probably
meant for
not.
a very specific audience.
I think the
Uh,
same was the case for that. Well, a lot of the stuff we looked at the other week as well. All
yes.
those different think tank articles. So this stream should be very much in a similar vein and be very information dense. But we will probably give out the links for a lot of this stuff afterwards so people can piece this all together and have a longer read through at length if they wish to.
Deliberately confusing. We're going to have to start, unfortunately, 5 years ago in 2017.
Let's put the rose tinted spectacles on for a moment and go back to a time when everything was that little bit more innocent and funny.
A simpler time, a better time. God, 5 years ago. Things haven't changed that much, really. I guess people are slightly less cringe or slightly more cringe, depending on your perspective. But this is actually a weirdly decent explainer from Engadget about some of the disparate elements of what was called at the time the Digital Economy Act. Because when it came out, people only reported a single aspect of it, which this headline does. This headline talks about how the Digital Economy Act will come between you and porn. It's the famous, infamous British porn license, which people thought had gone away, but it never really did go away. In fact, it has been on the books since the bill passed in 2017. They just said they couldn't feasibly put it into action, which we'll get to later.
Oh yes,
It's not
at least not yet.
No, at least not yet. But here we'll talk about this is the precursor to the online safety bill. The groundwork was all laid by the Digital Economy Act. What the Digital Economy Act did was it introduced mandatory age checks for porn sites. Most people know this aspect of it, but they couldn't figure out how it was going to work. They didn't have the digital ID system that they're making now. There's a lot of disparate boilerplate stuff in this Act too. Minimum speeds for internet, bill caps, tougher sentences for online piracy. They actually made it a maximum of 10 years in prison for copyright for the copyright infringement.
I do notice in the first paragraph there's a coy little mention here. Last week, MPs and Lords working on the Digital Economy Bill opted to forgo much of the usual ping-pong process of debating amendments and wording amongst themselves in order to get the thing passed. That good enough approach meant that the bill became law last Thursday after receiving immediate royal assent. The Digital Economy Act introduces a new requirement for porn sites to verify the age of visitors, rules regarding the capping of mobile phone bills, and it should help stop ticket touts from bulk buying online. But there's a lot more to it, so here's everything you need, Baba. Everything you need to know.
Yeah, there's also there was a big hubbub. I've not got the other article here that I had on it, but there was a big controversy because it was basically passed just before Parliament closed for the year.
Yes, well,
so
it was. I think they said up here it was July 8th, which is June 8th, which is one of the last weeks it's open, is it not? Before summer.
Yes, it is. It's one of the last. I think it was the last session before the summer break. So what this tried to do is it tried to establish ID verification on the internet. It basically tried to create a great firewall of China-style system for the British internet with penalties and a greater role for the Ofcom regulator in enforcing all of this.
Let's mention something they've got here as well. They're saying this will require a age verification regulator.
Yes.
Which the PIP is putting the British Board of Film Classification. However, I don't think they're going to be getting that contract, are they? This is going to be where, as we get along, and possibly some element of this aspect shows up in the online safety bill, that it won't be like the British Board of Film Classifications or the DVLA. It'll be some form of third-party public-private partnership that is set up to be a front for digital ID in another format.
Yes, this very much meshes, as we'll get into later, with the attributes framework we've talked about previously.
Hmm.
If anyone remembers that stream, again, quite a bit of an in-depth one. But the attributes
Yes.
framework is very much the hidden other half of this.
Well, yeah, they've
If you
got
view the two together, it comes into focus
I've got
here.
this other paragraph here. There's one slight issue with age gates, and that we're still no clearer on how they are to be implemented. Proving age using credit card details, the electoral roll, and pay monthly mobile phone contracts have all been suggested, but the government has admitted that forcing you to expose your identity might be a step too far. Did they now? And so it'll likely be some time before this new law can be enforced as the government and newly appointed regulator decide on the best and least intrusive way for porn sites to verify age.
It's create a problem that they have a solution in mind to. That's what it's
Yes.
about. The people who said that this was unworkable didn't see the full picture, which will become clearer later. I don't want to give the game away here. The other big aspect to the 2017 Digital Economies Act was the sharing of data between government departments.
I've just
It's
scrolled to
this.
that section.
Yes. It says a significant slice of the Digital Economy Act is dedicated to what's called digital government or digital governance, as it's also referred to, which is basically a broad set of laws that enable the sharing of your personal information between government departments. These new powers, as the government spins it, will allow for better public services to be delivered online and generally grease the wheels of administration. It means the government can build a database of civil registration information, for instance, which can include key details so you never have to dig out your certificate ever again.
Not just any birth
Data can be,
certificate, your paper birth certificate.
yes, never mind your digital birth certificate, which people now have. Data can be shared for many reasons, including for research and statistical purposes, as well as detecting fraud against the state. Say if somebody's claiming disability, blah, blah, blah. This sweeping set of provisions has been heavily debated and is undeniably contentious as it has been passed somewhat prematurely before Parliament is shut down. It mentions that there. How big data sharing will work in practice is still not fully clear. That's because while the Digital Economy Act introduced a legal framework, the codes of practice that detail exactly how the powers are to be used and what safeguards needs to be in place are currently in draft unapproved form. So the safeguards for the past law didn't exist when the law was passed. Are the powers even compatible with the EU general data? Yeah, they're not GDPR compatible, which is a huge part of it. But basically, GDPR has outs for governments anyway. It comes in here and says about Ofcom's new rules as well, that Ofcom basically has an expanded role when it comes to being an external regulator of the BBC, but also an external regulator of kind of the carrier aspect of it. Somebody mentioned the net neutrality stuff and the SOPA stuff in chat in America. It's a little bit like that as well, but it's a bit more sleight of hand in that it turns Ofcom into the equivalent of like the FCC, even more so. It kind of supercharges them into a combination of the FCC and the old British Censors Board. But we'll get onto that like
So
this.
yeah,
But this,
I wonder about this section here. Ofcom has a new power to ensure all PSBs are broadcasting enough UK-made kids programs as part of their licence, and the government itself can draw up regulations for on-demand providers to guarantee their content is accessible. This means obligations to add subtitles, sign language, and audio description to catch-up TV. Now that doesn't just mean that, because accessibility is part of one of your like DEI keywords, which is really a backdoor way for the UK government to make sure that things like Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime have enough paused garbage to burn your kids' retinas out with.
yes, a lot of it is that too. Like I said, it's a huge like uh what the Americans would describe as like pork barreling. There's a huge amount of pork in this, of pet projects of certain MPs who would like to have their own little kind of censorship and monitor um projects built into it. But it largely fell on its face because many of the aspects in it, most of this has not been put into practice yet.
Yeah.
It was a supposedly very ambitious bill. The piracy stuff they haven't really done. The porn stuff they couldn't really do, as we'll get into now, because in October 2019, after many, many, many delays, after many will they won't these, it reminds me of a lot of the local congestion charge stuff we've been having.
Mm.
In that it went away, but not really, in October 2019.
Yeah.
But that came just after the online harms white paper was published. I think that was in
April.
April of
Yeah.
2019. You have one that's superseding the other. It's very clear that the online harms white paper, which we'll be getting onto in more detail a bit later, and which precedes the online safety bill. Again, they keep changing terms here. First of all, you have the
The
Digital Economy Act, which does many of the same things that the online harm framework tries to do later, which is then taken over by the online safety bill. And these things, if you're not, connecting the red dots like an autist, you won't understand they're related to each other. And you won't understand the lineage between them, because essentially what the online safety bill does is take Section 3 of the Digital Economies Act and supercharge it and
well,
make
yeah,
it universal to the
it's
UK
the
internet.
same way that the Public Health Act 1984, which is a previous extension of original public health bills signed during World War II, allowed the government to have the emergency powers, or at least gave it the effective legitimacy. And they said, well, look at the Public Health Act 1984, that gives us the ability to enact all the COVID stuff. They're doing the same thing here. Well, because of the Online Business Act or Online Economy Act or whatever it was, Digital Economy Act, they, as you say, they now have precedent to do this. And now they've got precedent to have this online harms paper. They then take this and further develop it into the version we'll see further towards the end.
We have a couple of donations before we get a bit further on here. Glow in the Darks has given $10. Thank you, Glow in the Dark. Says, for your safety, we're going to need all your email addresses, social media accounts, and passwords. We need to make sure we can put the personal lock on and maybe put you in timeout with a stern talking to. Yeah, that's very much where this is going. Libertum with £5, thank you very much, says, I find it funny how you guys share channel. What's the funniest thing you have shared together?
Not answering that.
When we wait, we're always funny. We're comedy geniuses. I don't know if they're being coy or not. That feels like somebody's being coy.
I know, I read
Thank
that
you for the
myself
£5.
and had a giggle. However, I'm gonna completely silent it by continuing on to the BBC one. I've got here. UK's
Yes,
controversial porn blocker plan dropped. And as you say, this is October 2019, only, 5-6 months after they've reframed this 2017 bill into the online harms bill.
Yes, it hasn't been It hasn't been dropped at all. It has actually been expanded. But this is how the news cycle works. And the headlines now are not porn blocker, disgraced porn blocker plan returns. It's, as we'll come on to, online harm bill is coming to protect your kids from self-harm. Is the way
Yes.
it's going to be sold in future.
Well,
But this
analysis by Rory Kellen-Jones, technology respondent. In the middle of this article here, it was a plan said minister protect children from stumbling across pornography, an objective bound to be hugely popular with parents and anyone concerned about child safety. Notice how child safety is something he's mentioning here, which in 2017, when this other guy was writing about it, I don't remember there being a thing in there other than the kids program bit, which was a backdoor sort of accessibility thing. There was no mention of that. So where is he getting the kids thing from? It's obviously part of this reframing. The critics said it was an attack on civil liberties. It was the government trying to censor the web. It could endanger your privacy, and any database of porn users would be a honeypot for scammers. Well, boo-hoo! Most of all, questions were raised about whether it would work. With pornography shared on social media sites not affected by the ban, and savvy teenagers able to use VPNs to get around it. Now, the fifth culture secretary to be in post since the idea was mooted has dropped a plan. Nicky Morgan insists its objectives can still be achieved with the new regulator envisaged by the recent online harms white paper.
Yes, there we go. And that's where the admission is. That the fact that it's not been dropped, it's merely been expanded.
Yes.
And that the practical concerns that people raised were a trap. in that they said, well, this is
Yeah,
impractical.
here we
You have
go.
to build this, this,
They've got
this, and this.
the bit below here and expanded. In a written statement issued on Wednesday, Miss Morgan said the government would not be commencing Part 3 of the Digital Economy Act 2017 concerning age verification. Instead, she said porn providers would be expected to meet a new duty of care to improve online safety. This will be policed by a new online regulator with strong enforcement powers to deal with non-compliance. Here's this new universal online regulator that grew out of the one that was just meant to regulate age.
Yes. And it is, as we'll see with the contents of the online safety bill, it has been far expanded to any website that could have adult material on it in a peer-to-peer
OCL,
sense.
one of the firms offering age verification tools, was not happy about the decision. It is shocking that the government has now done a U-turn and chosen not to implement this, said its chief executive, Serge Acker.
Pig Farmer is absolutely steaming that the government isn't going to buy all the pigs.
Yeah.
That's funny. But the timeline here goes to, we jump to May 2021, where the actual online harms framework officially becomes the online safety bill. But throughout that process, it was really, the reason we didn't cover this is because it wasn't the online safety bill when we covered it. I think we covered this before this really took shape.
Yeah, no, we covered the white paper probably a couple months before this happened, maybe.
Yes, and the white paper wasn't as expansive as the explainer that we'll have on screen later. That actually came, I think, later, or it was buried at the time. We couldn't find it. There's a lot of this stuff that you really, really, really have to dig for. And linking these things together is the only way to properly understand them. So now we have the online harms bill, but it hasn't quite taken shape yet. It was only in February 2022. I don't want to go through all the rewrites of the bills. You'll just have to, trust me on this one because it is in there if you want to go through it yourselves.
Well, yeah, I've got it up
The
on
digital
screen just now.
economy,
Is the most recent version that's like 230 odd pages or whatnot.
If you look at the update from 2022, from February, apparently people aren't getting notifications for this one, but thank you for finding us. I know it takes effort sometimes. The Digital Economy Act ended up with the user-to-user stuff in it that it had originally, as we'll go through fully, but it also added the commercial pornography stuff to it as well. So that means it is fully kind of subsuming
is
a
this
lot
in
of
the
what the Digital Economy Act was trying
section?
to do. No, it's just what was updated in the bill in February. It's in the minutiae of it, basically. It's not listed here. I pulled this out by doing research, but I don't want to get it up on screen because it's boring and weird. It's in the current draft of the bill, though, and you can see when the bill was edited. It's just a thing to note that it was only in February of this year that the full bill, really in its current form, took shape. It didn't have a lot of the stuff in it that is as egregious as it is now.
Oh god,
it's a bill that was
just like every other piece of legislator. It's huge. It's just so much nonsense.
We want to, again, this is kind of the preamble. We have a lot to go through, I'm afraid. But I want to get through a chronology here. So the chronology is the Digital Economy Act came into law in 2017 with a whole bunch of unworkable provisions, the most unworkable of which was Section 3, known as the porn ban or porn license. In 2019, in May of 2019, April 2019, the Online Harms White Paper was published that really was meant to kind of replace and expand Section 3. In October 2019, the BBC reports that the porn ban is dead, but not really. In May 2021, the Online Harms Framework kind of initial draft comes online, but it is nowhere near as egregious because it is built up over a number of years with a number of provisions. And by February of this year, we end up with some of the more egregious things being added back into it. But none of this really makes it to the news cycle because it's being done in a very confusing chronology under 3 different names, and it's being added in stealth by the different drafts and edits of the bills that people don't tend to read. But to go through some of the intentions behind it and the policy document that underpins it, we'll have to go through the Online Harms White Paper.
But luckily for us, there is the Nagubu spec reading.
It's still about 30 pages, but it's big writing. I'd zoom in a little bit even, just to. It is like crayon.
It,
The
it
only way
does.
this could be funnier is it was like a crayon drawing.
Yeah, no, this does
Um,
remind me of like the kind of stuff you would see pasted up on like the inside of the fridge in a commercial kitchen where you don't expect everyone to speak good English.
Yes. I will say we did get a donation there from Aurelian Nautis Caesar saying, no, you can't watch this porn, only the porn mandated and preferred by the states. Oh god. Nationalized, that's what we're gonna end up with. Nationalized pornography. In like
Who's
British Leyland in porn
who's
form.
who's this absolute Chad down here in the first page? Hate! People shouting at each other. He is consuming some content even though he doesn't have a mouse.
He does not appear to have a mouse, no. I
He's
think
just
he just controls it with the hatred in his heart.
yes. Wait, I might need to zoom
As
in further because I think he's got a bit of a Beavis and Butthead look going about him.
he does have, I will say that this is an official policy document from listed from a .gov address. This is the easy read online harms white paper version 2. It's a slightly later version with a bunch of stuff added to it. Yeah, for those reasons, it talks about the online harms. There's a lot of illegal and hurtful information online. People in the UK and the rest of the world are worried about online harm. For these reasons, we think that the digital economy needs a new regulatory
The
framework to make
bold
sure that
words.
yes, well, they're kind of doing our work for us there because they're
The
referencing the digital economy bill.
digital economy. This means everybody that does business online and using technology.
That basically just means it's relying to everything. And they're talking about the digital economy bill, and this is the regulatory framework for the digital economy bill. And it's amazing they just kind of admit that here because that's never said in any of the other policy documents, but that's how it's meant to function. Okay.
So what's with the language in this? This is hilarious. Regulatory framework. Here. This means rules and laws so that people and companies know what their rights and responsibilities are. Is that like a sort of not pejorative, but here? Oh, does that make it your attention?
No, here as in here in this context.
No,
Here.
I know it's such a weirdly placed thing though.
This will make people safer and will clearly set out what we expect from companies. Here's what we get to here. The problem, there's a lot of illegal and harmful. Notice that they separate those two. It's not illegal harmful, it's illegal, but it should be like a comma here, and harmful information and online activity. People in the UK are worried about what they see and experience on the internet. Online platforms can be used for abuse and bullying. They can also be used to go against our democratic values or stop proper debate from
See,
happening.
I have to admit, I think as well that there is an insidious component to this. The people in the UK are worried about what they see and experience on the internet. To a great extent, they probably are, but not because people are saying racial slurs or intellectually questioning the legitimacy of democracy. It's because it's full of porn, and it's full of like horrendous racial depictions of white people and constant abuse directed towards them. Funnily enough.
Let's talk about radicalize. There's some high points here. I want to get through this quite fast.
Radicalize. Where is this? Yes.
It's radicalized. This means that a person starts to take on values and ideas that are very different from most people's values and ideas. So it just means you're outside the Overton window. That is their definition of being radicalized. We talk about grooming children.
Well, we get this is when you really start to get into the therapeutic state language. That the only reason you could be radicalized is because you are vulnerable. So you need our help because we've defined you as this lesser thing, which can only be brought up to where we are through our, verified. My God, they've put like child sex offenders groom children live stream.
Yep. I'm sure Careful's is suing them right now. There's a real danger. Some people use information. Here we go. Just below that. And again, in the same breath, they're talking about there is also a real danger that some people use information that is not true or go against our democratic values. Social media platforms use algorithms which sometimes mean you only see one point of view and not all sides of an argument. They're trying to use neutral language here, but it's just like, well, we're going to define the information that isn't true, and also the information that goes against our democratic values. It very much becomes clear that this is a pure
God,
information
it's really
regulatory
becoming like
fact.
mantras as well, because like the
Yes,
next, oh, it's your favorite cartoon. We'll get to that in a
it's
second.
so good.
But
Yeah.
like this next paragraph is the last paragraph, just repeated. This can mean that people don't hear different voices and opinions and only see one side of the story. It means that information that is not true can spread. It means that people may not see the other side of the story, or they may not see facts that prove some information is not true. It can also mean
Yeah.
that people think that what they see on their social media is believed by many more people than it actually is.
They're saying like the reverse part. They're saying
They're
what they want to do
that is
to people.
also them admitting the fact that people are using propaganda against us. But yes,
Yes.
there is your favourite. There's a Fosroda.
I don't understand what's zoom in on that. Like the clip art in this is amazing.
Do you
I don't
reckon
know
they?
who
Who do you think they paid to do this? Like, how do we get
it.
the hookup for the doing the .gov like clip art stuff?
It's very graphic
No,
designer's
Lionel
profession.
Richie. Ah.
Uh, I showed this to some of the Maya's Twitter boys, and we ended up with some memes of it because it's just so funny. If you want to if you want to supply the people with those, because it's very funny. It just look at it in all its glory. It's so good. Here's the Neil deGrasse Tyson version, and here's a we also have a portal version too, because I couldn't. He fit too perfectly. Like it works in perspective. I didn't edit this image that much,
Yeah, here we see the white
which
man using his racism telepathic powers to harm his local black man.
he's just that powerful. It's he
Whoa,
must be stopped.
where are we? There we are.
Um,
Zoom back
it
out.
talks about people in public life. So
Don't make fun
that's
of Katie Hopkins. Not
yeah,
Katie
that's
Hopkins,
code for
sorry. Katie
celebrities,
Price's
really.
kid.
Um, Here's the part that like flabbergasts me, because they just say it when if you go to a couple pages down here where it talks about the our response.
Our
This means we
response. There
plan
we
to
go.
this means we plan to deal with these problems. Um, This white paper sets out a plan of action to deal with the information or activity that harms people, especially children. It also sets out a plan of action to deal with information or activity that puts our way of life in the UK at risk. So they say this can include being a threat to the safety of the UK, being a threat to our rights and responsibilities, and coming back to what we talked about last week, um, being a threat to integration in the UK. Integration, this means making sure different people and cultures can come together and take part in society in an equal way. So it's not only integration, it's cultural equity. And being a
Sorry,
threat,
some of the chats like, is that Edward Dutton on the phone clip art?
yes, basically this is what the inside of Edward Dutton's head looks like when if drawn by a 5-year-old.
But no,
Um,
it's almost like uncanny that we're putting the signal out about that term integration being reframed, and here it is. Cultures can come together and take part in society in an equal way.
It also mentions, I believe, I'm not sure if it's slightly further down. It talks about, I think it's point 13, where it says, making things clear for companies. This is especially important when looking at information or activity that is harmful but not criminal.
Oh yeah, there is
We'll
of
see
course
that.
also the point companies taking steps to keep their users safe. Also a place where
Yes.
crime, terrorism, and hostile foreign state activity is not spread on the internet.
Again, there's all
Bloody
of this.
Russians.
There's all of this stuff bundled together. They bundle like child abuse with not liking the integration systems of immigrants in the UK. A lot of it is very boilerplate from here, and it's questions, and it's not very relevant. So I think we'll move on. But that is a very very telling explainer, especially the bits about
Still no
integration and
mention of who this
democracy.
independent regulator is going to be.
No, it turns out it's Ofcom. Uh,
Ah,
they
right, I
just
see.
they just like shove it on Ofcom, be like, it's your problem now,
And then, of
Ofcom.
course, like last week, there was white papers on the Tony Blair Institute about this.
Yes. There is one here about the online harms framework and another one about the online. Well, they're both about the online harms framework, actually, but the other one I think specifically mentions the online safety bill. These
Mm.
are very insidious because what I've noticed is that the articles on the Tony Blair Institute, they will pretend to be moderate on the issue and actually be against quote unquote the bad aspects of it. But
Mm.
they're not. If you look at this is actually by God, he's called Max Beaverton Palmer. I can
Yeah.
actually like smell the Eton textbooks.
Oh.
Um, but it talks about what the proposal does. Well, it pretends that we're a bit worried about freedom of speech because of the whole legal but
Oh my
harmful
God, yeah.
framework.
They're like, oh, freedom of speech, blah, 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 we need to get rid of. All right, they do the freedom of speech thing, then they instantly get into like abuse online, real world
Yeah.
increases in physical harm to minorities. In a paper published in January on China's tech landscape, we set out how China is a pioneer of digital censorship and laws require all user generated content to be monitored to prevent any prohibited discussion or content. The UK government has been careful to avoid this trajectory. In fact, the focus on procedural regulation and transparency makes this a poor model on which to build an authoritarian censorship regime. If done well, the regulation can make online platforms more accountable for the restrictions on speech they already apply to their users. That's a weird switcheroo they're doing there.
Yeah. There's some great language here. They talk about any legislation must avoid setting standards that can only be met by the largest platforms. They should leave room for Ofcom to make proportionate decisions. It's amazing because this is in 2019. This is when the framework had only just come out and none of the questions have been answered.
Mm,
But they already talking here like Ofcom is already in charge of it. Like
yeah.
they know what's going to be in the final bill because this is either they are like Nostradamus level good at predicting
Well,
it,
they
or they basically
also
wrote it.
they also sort of tip the hat a little bit by suggesting that, for example, the Communications Act 2003 sets out the
Yeah.
areas Ofcom must have regard to in standards of regulation, including size of service, audience expectation of persons who are unaware of the nature of a program's content being unintentionally exposed. A great bit of legalese that. There should be equivalents in a
Yes.
new regulation that give Ofcom the scope to make targeted and platform-specific decisions. Basically, them saying, look, Ofcom already has oversight over this stuff. You don't even need to justify it. Just literally give it to them. Which is
We'll
possibly
we'll
what
get back
happened exactly.
we'll get back to that soon because the Ofcom switcheroo has a bit of a smoking gun to it.
Well, I
When we
think this
when we
is probably one as well here.
Yes, it is, but the regulatory decisions surrounding BitChute,
Hmm.
we'll discuss in a little bit of detail, are very much they were actually described as a test case for them having the online harms
Yeah.
framework.
Yeah,
Um,
Ofcom is the obvious choice to be the regulator and is well suited for the task for now.
yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Is it-
Should we keep moving on here so we don't, because this is quite a big paper.
It is well, the thing is it's quite boilerplate. I just want to talk quickly about what it does in terms of its
Hmm.
it should empower Ofcom to make proportionate decisions at high level principles about the values of a healthy online world. So it doesn't even pretend that they're not trying to completely rule the culture and environment of the internet as a whole, which is even for the UK government weirdly ambitious. It feels delusional, um, simply because the internet is a global thing. But as we'll learn through some of the enforcement proposals here, they're really trying to balkanize our internet in an almost Chinese kind of way, and
Yes.
hoping to get the rest of the world to play ball with us, specifically the EU most of all. But they really just praise the framework. They praise the proportionality of it. They praise focus on harms, and they praise the Ofcom as a ready-made regulator. There's a second article here which I don't want to go through in too much detail from the Tony Blair Institute, which basically sidesteps the bill and says even if we do have the bill, we must have interventions against online unpleasantness,
Hmm.
and that they're basically saying that the online harms bill shouldn't stop people being pumped full of COVID level fear, and that the government needs to know when to utilize negative feelings
Well,
and
yeah,
negative
they're
when
pretty. The UK's recently published online safety bill notes the risk of creating toxic online environments negatively impacting a user's ability to express themselves online. Oh,
They're very much saying that, look, even there isn't a regulatory framework, because we can't really legislate this away because it's impossible, we should try
God, yeah.
and
They're
culturally
actually engaging in a
remove this.
further level of like aggregation here. We've had the legal and harmful, and now there's the unpleasant. Think of
Yeah.
unpleasantness as a residual category left over after we put some behaviours into the harmful category. Unpleasantness can still negatively affect participation, but we do not want to treat them in the same manner as harmful content. Ugh,
Let me
positivity
double check.
prompts. Jesus.
Let me double check our recent events here, because I think we've got a couple of donations. It's not showing up on the back end, but I can see it in the front end here. Glow in the Dark a few minutes ago said, "We pushed you to the fringe and excluded you, making you isolated. Now if you want to come to follow this program, and you'll be called an extremist." Yeah, it's basically codifying of like de-radicalization
Oh, here we
within
go.
the internet.
Uh, sorry, I'll let you finish those and say what I was going to say.
It says Blair acts like he's concerned about X, put forth a list of concerns. When Blair deems he is the main force against X, then he says X has been addressed and kills the opposition, which the plebs will follow. Issue gets through.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, he'll basically identify the very obvious flaw in it, sidestep it, pretend it's been sorted, and then just leave it.
Well, no, he's like, we've got people working on it.
Yeah, top men.
And this is proper, just like mafia stuff.
Yes,
Hey, what about such
it
and
is.
such? Yeah, we got a guy working on it. But no, the positivity prompts. Multiple platforms, including Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, have experimented with text prompts which nudge users away from offensive language.
Nudge, you say?
These are a peer. These are a
What you say? Always beginning.
These are appear on posts which breach a certain toxicity score,
This almost feels like
algorithmically
it's getting BBC
assigned.
Pigeon.
Yeah, algorithmically assigned by software such as Google's Perspective API. Research suggests that these do result in users reconsidering their language, and moreover can reduce both the toxicity of a user's future comments and of other comments in conversations they are part of. You know, here's the casual admittance that Google is running like a neurolinguistic algorithm thing on everything you see online and developing a score for you.
Yes, you are basically being social credit scored there. God, there's a Zephos asks, "Is the Boomer Man doing okay?" He's doing okay. He's currently looking after his mum's dogs, so he's over at his mum's house, babysitting dogs. But he's enjoying it because they're good boys. So no, the Boomer Man is doing okay. He's just busy helping his family out and stuff like that. So he's outside touching grass and walking dogs. We salute his efforts with the good boys. Yes, the eunuch says this entire thing is cursed. It makes me angry. This is basically what happens if you read any government white. But like, you could have just thrown a dart. All government white papers in the UK are now like this.
Well,
We're just going to focus on some of the more egregious ones.
yeah, no, there's one I want to look at here as well because like he again references Francis Fukuyama, and so I'm just gonna have to. One can imagine switching social media to a positive mode in which algorithms would do all the work instead. It is not easy for algorithms to accurately determine something broad as unpleasantness, and there would invariably be misclassification. But by selecting positive mode, users indicate that they wish to skew the balance towards more zealous filtering. This technology could be developed by platforms themselves. Alternatively, it could be developed by external companies as middleware, software and services that would add an additional editorial layer between the dominant internet platforms and internet users, to borrow a definition used by Francis Fukuyama and Daphne Keller.
Oof. It's it's like Prozac mode. It's like you're putting people's social media on lithium when it all.
I do like now that the Tony Blair Institute has its own Web3 and crypto subheading.
Oh God, no!
Take that for what you will.
I guess it makes you feel pretty justified.
I know. Do you know what makes me feel really justified was that Nigel Farage was hawking Bitcoin the other day.
Oh no!
Exactly.
Farage,
take that for what you will. But yeah,
Farage, please.
Then there comes in essentially this continued reframing from Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport on.
This is when the online. This is the day that the online safety bill was proposed, and they hashtag it online harms, so people won't be as confused.
Yes. So it's from 12th May 2021, which
so the
is
day it was announced.
yeah.
Our groundbreaking laws will bring fairness and accountability to the online world, protecting children, cracking down on racist abuse, and safeguarding our liberties. Digital Secretary Oliver Dowden has announced our online safety bill. Hashtag online harms. New online harms laws. Website must remove illegal or harmful content or face fines of 10% of turnover. Freedom of speech will continue to be. It's a fig leaf and a slogan, but yeah.
Yes.
There's
And
that one, and
then
there's also one here from the Diana Award.
same people supporting the Migration Policy Institute
Yes.
under the Oxford University. And they wrote one of the white papers we were looking at last week. And they're coming from the other therapeutic state angle, which you always see in relation to propagandizing children. Anti-bullying. Through our work with anti-bullying pro ambassadors, we understand the powerful role the internet plays in young people's lives. I bet you fucking do understand it. The time is right for further innovation when it comes to safety, and we welcome DCMS online safety bill that will help keep young people safe online. Aye. And then there you go, Diana Award welcomes the government's Safe Online and Online Harms Safety Bill today.
Notice how they've dropped the online harms part now, though.
No,
because
it's there.
No. This is 2021. They've dropped it now.
Yes.
It's now purely the online safety bill. The online harm framework is a long forgotten memory because there was a huge amount of negative SEO surrounding it. I think I don't want to show it on screen. It's a bit of a waste of time. But if you Google online harms and Google online harms bill, or you Google online safety bill, the online safety bill top 3 is all positive, and the online harms bill top 3 is all negative. So I think they've reframed it and renamed it as a pure like SEO thing, which is funny. Because like I said, there was as we'll go through them, there were some excoriating criticisms of the online harms framework when it was first published. Because as you've seen, it very much is just a Ministry of Truth thing. It is just we will say what is harmful on the internet, and what is harmful on the internet is what we don't like.
Yes.
But there's a weird from the other direction one here from the New Statesman, basically saying it's not censorship, it's democratic censorship. It's MPs, not tech bosses, not those dirty tech bosses, will decide what is legal but harmful content under the revised. This is the new revised online safety bill, because this is from March 2022. This is about a month after it was revised into more resembling its current form. Will give Parliament the power to define the term rather than social media firms. Government will no longer let social media giants decide what constitutes legal but harmful content. This is supposed to be their revision to fix the issue. This is their fig leaf. Since being redrafted following recommendations to parliamentary committees, the bill seeks to regulate websites where users interact, such as social media platforms, by stopping the spread of illegal content like child sex abuse and terrorism. But what they've also done is redefine any social media site as you needing a photo ID. I remember there was that whole petition of people need an ID, should need an ID to get Twitter. Well, that's already happening. The reason they ignored or didn't debate that petition is because they've essentially already done it. News publishers in their comments section will be exempt, apparently. The government says the bill strikes the balance between safety and free speech, makes the UK the safest place in the world to be online. Adherence will be overseen by the Communications Regulator, Ofcom, which will have the.
There is, to your point about like the AAIQ document drawn up for it. You've also got to think, and it's someone the points or this is Zach Smith and the chat's pointed out. Makes sense that online safety will works better than online harm bill. I guess everyone wants to be safe and not to think about harm. Exactly, because the online harm bill makes it sound like the internet is harmful, whereas we're actually just making the internet safe. Is on a very baseline level makes you think that the internet is something positive, or at least more positive than it if it needs to be treated as something that is harmful.
This is very much like the neutral position thing. It says not
Hmm.
strong enough or too far. A point of contention has been the use of legal but harmful, with safety campaigners telling Spotlight that the term is wishy-washy and would allow social media giants with robust legal teams to avoid retribution. They also said that certain harms defined as legal can cause devastating effects, such as cyberbullying. Now the government has confirmed that it will decide what is legal but harmful, and they will be set out in legislation approved by Parliament, meaning decisions are not on the whim of internet executives. They're putting this forward as a positive thing. Social media giants will be obliged to carry risk assessments of what legal but harmful content is likely to appear on their platforms and set out teams and conditions how they will deal with it and enforce these. It's so onerous. The government says this will help to protect free speech by removing the threat of social media firms being over. Again, they're trying to sell it from the angle of we're doing the media regulation, guys. We're not going to let them censor the Tory boys.
Yeah,
Therefore, everybody's saved.
this is an avenue that suspends big tech overreach. And we'll see. It's perfect to Juvenile. You know, they are painting the big tech companies as the enemy castle, and they're making sure that the big tech companies, whether they want to or not, whether they're on side or not, it doesn't matter. We will treat you like you are the enemy to us because it allows us to justify all these actions against you, and then we,
Well,
as a central power, make sure that the internet is safe for the lowly children who have no power, and we must act on their behalf. And in doing so, again, we further justify our actions on this enemy castle.
there's the bit here where they talk about fig leaf. We'll actually go over. There's an article from a free speech organization called Open Rights, who did quite a scathing review of this, who talk about it as state-sanctioned censorship and the fact that you can't have government overviewing speech about government because it becomes a conflict of interest, which is very, very basic, but well, that's what sovereign powers do anyway. There's like a limited hangout thing here where it's like, well, this would create a situation where the fox becomes the farmer, but it's like, well, they are already. This just codifies it in the open. It's an interesting debate where it's almost an argument from retardation, in which they pretend this doesn't happen already. The starting point for a lot of the allowable counter argument is that we live in a free, democratic, almost utopian society, and this is a threat to it, rather
Well,
than this just being
there's
a
also
further part of what has already happened.
a continued element as well of this coming up with faulty almost legislation so that you can then develop a technology that has much wider purposes than just answering the question
Yes.
you want it to. But because you've
Of course.
engaged in that in such a specific way, it's like, well, now that we've got this thing, we can solve this problem and all these other ones. You know, under the revised bill, cyber flashing, sending unsolicited sexual images or videos will also be made illegal. That's all very well and fair. That doesn't sound like something good. But I would imagine the only way really to police that is essentially constantly read and record everybody's screens and pictures they take at any and all moments.
Specifically private messages, yes.
Yeah,
As well.
but
So
I also mean the fact that you would, you know, even on something like Snapchat, you know, you can send a message to someone without screenshotting it. And if I was, you know, if I was so inclined to be cyber flashing someone, that's probably the way I would do it. So it would require my phone to be connected to some sort of cloud machine learning algorithm that constantly reads what's on the screen. So that when something like that does come up, they can go, oh, that person's bad, and report them.
I was going to get into that because if you go to the section where it says criminal offences for tech bosses, it gets into that. It hints very, very heavily at it, let's say. Tech bosses and senior managers will face 2 years in jail or a fine if they do not comply with the rules around presenting information to Ofcom. These include refusing to hand over information, destroying evidence and information, providing false information, and failing to attend meetings with regulators, or stopping Ofcom from entering their offices. Basically, Ofcom become the informational internet Stasi. They can make you hand over whatever information they want. They can make you both generate and log whatever information they find desirable. You cannot fail to attend meetings with them, and you cannot stop them from entering your offices. They basically have open access to your entire service, and you will have to, by law, log all user data, or you will not be in compliance with Ofcom.
Well,
This basically makes Telegram in its current form impossible in the
well, no,
UK.
look at the way they're framing it here as well. This duty of care no longer means that you have to deal with this when it's pointed out. These will come into force 2 months after the bill becomes law, rather than the previously stated 2 years, making the possibility of prison more immediate. Websites will also now have a duty to report any cases they detect of child sexual exploitation and abuse to the National Crime Agency, replacing the existing voluntary reporting regime in the UK. So they're now saying it is the duty of these, platforms to police all this stuff, which means they're going to have to they can't employ an office to read this stuff day in, day out. It's not going to work. It's not feasible, which means they're going to have to develop some kind of thing that is going to read all this stuff and report it itself, which is either going to be useless and unable to make any sort of clear, verification of abuse or possible abuse in any case, or it's going to be turned up to the absolute max and it's going to flag everything it sees. If not both.
Well, there's someone in chat was saying Ofcom could force you to hand over private encryption keys. Well, they could do that anyway.
Yeah.
Because the UK effectively banned end-to-end encryption and legally mandated backdoors into all communications platforms. There is no de jure ban on encryption, but there is a de facto ban on encryption. This has been in place since last year, I believe. It was one of the big things the Cameron government promised, and it has been the internet end-to-end encryption on the UK's the online safety bill is going to enhance that further, but it is something that is with the crime bill, I think it was as well. There's been multiple bills that basically made end-to-end encryption in the UK effectively illegal.
Yes.
But you'll say tech boss and senior manager will face 2 years in jail or a fine. So this is now a criminal offence. These will come into force 2 months after the bill passes.
That was
2 months. Sorry,
that was the one I was reading earlier
previously
on.
to 2 years. Yeah. Concerns. Yeah, it's Ofcom is basically being turbocharged because they are. They will have to probably triple in size because of this. It's insane.
No way.
Not more, but
a Quango, a thing connected to the government, is writing a paper and approaching a consultation with the argument that it needs more overreach and more oversight. No way.
Well, they're pretending to compromise with the whole government will do it thing. That's what this TechCrunch article is about. This is from September, but no clarification has been forthcoming. In fact, the bill is about to have its full third. I think it's already had its third reading in Parliament. If I look at it here, it's due to basically be passed in its current form. So none of the safeguards promised here that have been hand waved by the new incoming Prime Minister have taken place. That's what that TechCrunch article is about. I don't want to read any of it because I'm kind of getting a little bit behind the ball here. But there's been a lot of promised safeguards that haven't materialized about the legal but harmful stuff, because that, along with the integration stuff, is some of the most worrying. But we should also get into, there is a policy document here that Ofcom has put out itself about how it's going to enforce the online safety bill. And it mentions, I believe, harmful but legal content, legal but harmful content 10 times.
Yep.
If you go to the first mention of it,
it's on the 8th page, I think, is the first mention.
7th page.
7th page.
It's page 5
sorry,
in the document, but page 7 in the pages is the intro page.
Category 1, the highest reach user-to-user services with the highest risk functionalities with transparency requirements, a duty to assess risks to adults of legal but harmful content requires relating to fraudulent advertising and a variety of other duties.
But they're talking about the special categories. And a lot of that, I think the category 1s will be your Twitters, your Facebooks, your Instagrams, basically any of the tech giants that they deem have the technology already to do this, because they know they do. They've been negotiating.
Well, they said it in the Tony Blair one that Google are using their API stuff to read the language. I'm sure they can use that to read the images too.
The government has estimated that around 30 to 40 services will meet the threshold to be assigned a category based on the current policy intention. As such, we anticipate that most in-scope services will not fall into any of these special categories. So they're creating that they're trying to limit their remit and workload because they know that monitoring the entire internet is impossible. They're just trying to monitor the 30 or 40 big services. It also codifies them basically in law and creates a situation where the current crop of big services are the only people allowed to serve content for children, or are the only people approved to serve quote unquote non-harmful content, and the rest of the internet can basically be blocked by Ofcom as harmful. That's the way they're going to do it. They're going to work with the social media platforms, like what's happened in the EU, to codify them in law as the only services that fall under government protection because they fall under government audit. That's how this sausage gets made. Under the bill, services can choose whether or not to host content that is legal but harmful to adults, and Ofcom cannot compel them to remove it. But they can just block the site. Category 1 firms must assess risk associated with certain types of legal content that may be harmful to adults, have clear terms of service explaining how they handle it, and apply those consistently. They must also provide user empowerment tools to enable users to reduce the likelihood of encountering this content. So it's, again, de facto being censored. This does not require services to block or remove any legal content unless they choose to do so under their terms of service. It's heavy pressure, though, and no large service will come out and say, we host harmful content as defined by the UK government. Again, they talk about our plans for each area of the regime, which is a great way of phrasing it. 4 key areas: protecting people from illegal content, protecting children from age inappropriate content, empowering adults to protect themselves from legal but harmful content, increasing public transparency of categorized services actions to protect. Is this, correct me if I'm wrong, is this the document that also talks about media literacy, or is that a different one?
That was elsewhere when we get to the full fact stuff.
Yeah, heavy pressure is an understatement. It's basically banned. It's illegal in name. It's illegal in all but name. Is what it is under these proposals. And Ofcom is very much hinting at it. Again, empowering adults to protect themselves. You're not censoring the content. You're empowering people to protect themselves from it. It's if you can believe it, it does get worse than this. There's a lot more we have to go through, so we have to pick up the pace a little bit.
Yeah,
is there anything else you want to go?
Well, there's all sorts of stuff in here about risk management. They're going to have to draw up like a chart basically of which ones are high risk or high impact. They're talking here about we have long recognised the potential for different digital regulatory regimes within the UK to interact, and the importance of streamlining efforts with regulatory bodies. That's why we work with the ICO, CMA and FC to establish the Digital Regulation Corporation Forum to support coordination across online regulatory efforts in the UK. So they've drafted up even like a larger or Ofcom sort of stimulant to go next to it.
Yeah, there's a Tech Dirt article here. I don't think we can include it right now. We might have to cover this another time. That does also talk about the fact that the online safety bill basically puts the last nail in the coffin for end-to-end decryption.
Yes,
that is partially what it's meant to do. But big.
I think we'll go over one last thing that's in this document, which is there on page 14. Elements and timings for implementation. They've got their timeline. Early 2023, royal assent. Will there be anyone there to give royal assent in early 2023?
Interesting.
Yeah, Ofcom's powers commence consultation on guidance and codes for legal harms, children's access assessments, transparency reporting and categorization thresholds. Some services may need to respond to Ofcom information requests. Stakeholders are able to respond to consultation on illegal harms. Stakeholders are able to respond on consultation on child respect. A lot of stakeholders involved in this all of a sudden. Where did that terminology come from?
Yeah. A lot of that will be people who will come to later, like the NSPCC or
Yeah, because we've got other stuff here about
Mind.
they're going to be bringing in something they're going to call consultation on guidance and codes for child protection. Parliament approves first codes. Guidance and codes for adults risks assessment. I mean, this almost sounds like they're drawing up in the same way they would go about like drawing up a bill about mental health and clarifying like, oh well, here are the risks for children, here are the risk assessments for adults, here's how you clarify them as medically insane or not. There's a lot of the sort of similar language going on here. You can tell there's probably going to be some intensely insidious stuff put in here as part of children's risk assessments, or whatever will be approved in the end 2024 as Parliament approves adults codes and child protection codes.
It's again, if you want to read the document yourself, I'd recommend it. But they do go into detail about how they will enforce this, which basically means that they become the de facto regulator of what is and isn't harmful to people's mental health online.
And then
which is a hugely open category.
We'll keep rapid firing through them here. You've got one from the Times from 20th of January 2021. So just before there is the movement from the harms bill to the safety bill, just months prior, BitChute hosts scores of videos related to Holocaust denial.
Yes. And glorification. Its users can watch videos concerning conspiracy theories about the US presidential election, the coronavirus pandemic, and vaccines. Don't know. I say it's the first big test case for social media regulation. Last year, BitChute, which was registered in Newbury, Berkshire, was found to have hosted videos from banned far-right terrorist groups, researched by the Community Security Trust, a Jewish charity found.
Yeah. In the days before Holocaust Memorial Day yesterday, the Trust searched BitChute for 5 terms: Holocaust, Auschwitz, Hitler, gas chambers, and Anne Frank. It collected the top 20 results for each term, which resulted in 97 videos because of 3 duplications. The Trust said that the vast majority of the search results either related to Holocaust denial, distortion, inversion, and glorification. Well, you looked it up on a site where that stuff is explicitly meant to be placed because you made it illegal to have it anywhere else.
It's the holding zone for it because you made it illegal everywhere that isn't that place. Videos and blah 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 blah. Dave Rich, the government has previously announced that Ofcom will be given powers to investigate social media companies such as Facebook and Twitter under the Online Harms Bill, which is due to be debated this year. Mr. Rich said this is a dry run ahead of them potentially being the regulator for everything. What they do about this one platform that's so unarguably appalling that there's not even any grey area. It would carefully assess any complaint. Basically, BitChute got fucking reamed by Ofcom and is largely inaccessible in the UK after this. And that's the model that will be used going forward. This was the test case. And if you have any content that they consider in any way harmful, they will just do this to you. And I think that this may end up in a situation where YouTube just removes us and people like us, and this entire side of YouTube could be gone overnight because of this. And that's really what it's meant to do. Yeah, BitChute lost nearly all of its funding as well.
You want an alternative to view content on? How dare you? Maybe we'll get back into this. Is one from the Open Rights Group you've got here from.
I will preface this by saying that this has a lot of incredulity in it, but they don't seem to realize that the AIDS verification system is non-functional by design. It's meant to be a problem that is then fixed by digital ID, as we'll get to in a little bit. Another quick donation here, $2, sorry. Legal but problematic speech, get the blue hair dye. Oh no. This is from the Open Rights Group, which it seems to be the de facto piece of criticism that is quoted about the Online Harms Bill, and seems to be one of, it's all about the compromise position again, in that they've proposed this horrific online Stasi bill in which everything you say will be categorized, monitored, and you will have to use your ID to access anything the government deems as potentially serving you harmful content, not even definitely serving you harmful content as they define it. But age verification, the online safety bill. Do you want to tackle this one?
I can if you want, yeah. The draft online safety bill's provisions on mandatory age verification don't just threaten your rights to privacy and freedom of expression, they also threaten the integrity of the internet's architecture. See, this is the thing when people say stuff like that, I'm kind of like, I'm not really bothered. You tell me if they bring in all this stuff that's going to ruin the internet and make it unusable? Cool, yeah, fire in. As part of its goal to
It's going to make it it's not going to make it unusable. It's going to make it unusable in anything as a front end for Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah. No, as part of its goal to make the UK the safest place in the world to be online, government's draft online safety bill includes provisions which will mandate verification processes onto all sites, services, or applications offering user-to-user content or communication which can be accessed in the UK. Now, on top of
listen to that framing though. It's any website that has user-to-user content.
Well, I was thinking that, we can look at this on a wider scale, that anything that is close to a forum allows you to email the person that owns the page, basically any form of communication that isn't Facebook, as you said, Twitter, massive mainstream stuff. They're going to be told that you as a provider need to pay for all this software now that does these processes. So, there's an instant winner picking thing going on here. I mean, what if Ofcom just decides that, or whoever is in charge of licensing this age verification software, whether it's Google or whoever, just decides that, like, no, Telegram doesn't get it. Maybe, you only get it on YouTube as part of your page if you pay for a certain license or you meet a certain set of standards, or it's not just the fact that there's this stuff. We've also got to think about all the logistical elements that get built up because of what this bill is asking these companies to do, and the fact that the vast majority of places we interact with online probably won't be able to meet those requirements.
No.
Instead of making Telegram illegal, they'll just make it unfeasible, which is a lot easier.
They will regulate it. They will bureaucratize it out of existence. They will put so much paperwork on it that it's technically legal, but it's unfeasible. And I think a big goal of what they're doing is to make these companies unilaterally pull out of the UK market. That is their end goal, is that they will just be walled off like China is. I think they're looking at what China does and drooling, because a lot of Western media and a lot of Western tech companies have really just done what China wants. They've unilaterally abandoned the country as a market and allowed them to have their own domestic tools completely in their control, and not have Western interference in like an Arab Spring way. And that's really ultimately what the UK government and all governments want, is to have companies that aren't willing to play ball essentially commit Sudoku.
Yeah, they're talking here about how do we get here? 2 years ago, the ICO's draft age-appropriate design code attempted to mandate age verification for all sites, services, for all content, for all users, regardless of scope, proportionality, or risk. This was due to pressure from children's rights group. Blah blah blah. Steer the UK's post-Brexit internet regulation of creation of a market for their products. Blah blah blah. Part 2, Chapter 4 states that 1. A provider of a regulated service must, at a time set out in Section 27, so not undecided yet, carry out an assessment to determine whether it is possible for children to access the service or any part of the service, and, if it is possible for children to access the service or any part of the service, to determine whether the child, the user, is met in relation to the service or any part of it. It's basically a really long-winded way of saying, can children access your site? Congratulations, you're now fucked.
Yes.
Which is all sites. I mean, they're not, unless we are going full on towards what's coming up at the end here, possibly, where you've got to do like an iris scan on your webcam before the computer turns on. There is no way that you won't have a website that children can't access. Yeah, are age verification products safe? So I take it Some age verification insurance providers make the case that their products are safe, however, the sector remains largely unregulated outside of basic GDPR provisions, which is deeply problematic, and government, as you know, is keen to water down GDPR provisions in favour of innovation, which in this context means keeping age verification providers very lightly regulated. As head of the Online Safety Bill, backbenchers in Parliament have introduced a bill, the Age Assurance Minimum Standards Bill, to establish, as the name suggests, minimal privacy, ethics and human rights standards around the use of these technologies. However, this approach would not provide sufficient protection across the huge range of commercial applications which were required to implement the technology. Again, this is almost like the Blair Institute here, where these people are the open rights group, they're concerned about free speech, transparency, privacy, and then their complaint is that, oh, well, this bill's not bloody well good enough because it doesn't stop all these things being classified as dangerous content, possibly.
Well, they're going for a feasibility argument rather than a this is evil, the people in charge of it are evil argument, which is the only real argument against it. You don't make a technological argument. You don't make a bureaucratic argument. You make an argument that the entire system, the entire proposal itself is immoral. That's the only way you can argue against it without falling into the trap of them proposing, say, the attributes framework we've talked about previously as the cure to this. They're essentially setting up. It's like, well, your system's not big enough. Why wouldn't it be bigger? And they're like, well, we're just going to propose a bigger system. It's like, well, that's horrible. But they've pretended to address your concerns there because you're playing devil's advocate and you're playing into their arguments. That's what this does.
Yeah, the last section I've got here, but why just stop at age checks? Well, the thought of mandatory age verification across all sites and services will horrify many people. It must be understood in context as part of a wider push to mandate stronger identification of social media users and expand the scope of mandatory verification from age to other areas. What are the other areas? Please do tell us. At the expense of anonymity and privacy, that is a bigger question which we'll come back to in a later post, blah, blah, blah. Right, I'm going to just keep carrying through because it's like 8:45 already and we need to get through through this stuff at some point.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here.
This is one from Private. It was this Banking and Finance Review, the Online Safety Bill, and the case for a digital identity utility.
Well, this really is the meat and potatoes of what's going on here. This is a massive boon for the UK digital identity industry, which
do we
the
know
previous
who this
article
is written by?
No. It flatly refuses to say.
So there's just a website called globalbankingandfinance.com.
Yes. That puts this stuff out.
I see.
And has extremely good SEO. It's one of the first things that pops up when you look for online safety bill identity verification. This is one of the top results.
Oh, here we go, yeah. The UK government's updated online safety bill is finally set to become law, but while the legislation has become welcomed by banks and consumers... Banks? I don't remember any mention of banks before, do you? More specificity will be needed if the UK is to become the safest place to go online, writes Martin Wilson, CEO of Digital Identity Net.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, they're just pretty upfront. The bill, 5 years in the making, vows to hold social media companies, search engines, and other apps and websites accountable for the content posted on their platform. You know, here's the complete like macro view. It's been going on for 5 years. This is an assault on these like institutions to do with them as they please.
It goes on to talk about Ofcom regulation, non-compliance, non-cooperation with Ofcom. They see it as a welcome move. They talk about one of the other aspects that it's being sold under is that we're going to use this to stop scams. This will stop scams. Like online scams weren't already illegal.
Yeah.
This stuff is already illegal. It's already against all the terms of service. The services are playing whack-a-mole with this as much as they can, as much as their tools will allow them, because it is an existential risk to a lot of these sites if they get a reputation as being a host for scams. It is one of the things that sites legitimately do try and combat, but are bad at because of the fire hose of it that happens. It's a numbers problem. It's not a legislative problem.
Yeah, here's a key, like, I swear Martin Lewis, the financial dude, people who are more familiar with like UK daytime TV will know who this guy is. He has his own walking nudge unit.
Yeah.
We are amidst an epidemic of scam adverts. Scams don't just destroy people's finances, they hit their self-esteem, mental health, and even leave some considering taking their own lives, which we'll come into further on. The UK Finance Chief Executive also welcomed the move. We strongly welcome the government's announcement that it will expand the scope of the online safety bill to include advertising on social media and search engines. So basically everything online.
Yes.
Peer-to-peer content and adverts, which is everything. I mean, what do you get on the internet that isn't that?
Let's get to the vital role for banks, because
Yeah.
that's the fun part here. Banks have a vital role to play here. Not only do they have a trusted relationship with consumers, they also have the data. The 1.5 billion already invested in open banking has effectively verified 98% of the UK's population, laying the groundwork for a nationwide digital identity utility and negating the need for mandatory national ID system. Jesus Christ. Just I'll just leave that one there for a second.
Yeah, using this information, users could be swiftly and securely identified prior to any transaction. Such a system would not only significantly reduce banks' losses, it would enhance their reputation as a trusted custodian of their clients' money and put them at the centre of the fight against fraud. See, this is only is missing one thing, and that's a reference to blockchain.
Yes. Similar systems already exist elsewhere, such as Norway and Sweden, both of which have launched their own separate bank-based ID systems. Because if there's one institution that can be trusted with all your personal information, it's the banks. It's to reduce payment fraud, with Norway's bank ID scheme reducing payment fraud from 1% to just 0.000 in a transaction value. That how are they measuring this though? That's the thing. Scams will just move to, like, a lot of it's crypto, so you can't. That's not a transfer of funds via a bank. So it's you can't legislate that out. You can't legislate out idiots giving the full details of their bank card, or just giving, like, if you were able to steal someone's bank ID, for example, that would give you unprecedented access, and fraud would become even
Well,
worse than it already is.
that's something I said when we looked at the crypto scam
Yeah.
ages and ages ago, and I put forward that there's two possible situations, or the third more realistic situation, which is the anarcho tyranny one, which is, crypto systems are so strong and so resilient that we are silenced and shut down on a moment's notice at any point because they've got like this digital information grid that AI prompts them every time something's too radical, too extreme, or this, that, or the next thing. Then there's the other possibility, which is that crypto, blockchain, and the way it works opens up an infinite number of new scam activities, as you've just said. Or you have these two situations at the same time, which generally happens, which is that you will be silenced, suppressed, and you will have no liberty with your finances, but you will be at liberty to be scammed from, like you have never seen before.
Yes, somebody can basically take oh God, someone can basically take your entire digital identity over, and you'll be unable to prove who you are, possibly for years.
Yeah, and this is something we've talked about a number of times. If you are someone in the chat and you're not aware of the UK Digital Identity and Attributes Trust Framework, go find either this version of it, the older versions of it, read through these things at length, because, like, some people will sort of slyly suggest that some of the stuff we're saying about, like, crypto and blockchain and these big data networks, that there is no links. If you bury yourself deep in these white papers and you read and read and read through them, you find all this stuff. It's all there.
Well, if we go to the other article here, which is basically biometric update, and it's basically an advert for a tool called Yoti, which has been picked as one of the winners.
Sorry, which one is this? I don't think I've
It's
got the link here.
biometricupdate.com. Have you not got that one up?
No, I don't. No, it's cool. I've got it now. It's just it's like the only one from the Google Doc I hadn't opened.
Cool. It's basically an advert for this Yoti service, which was founded and almost wholly funded by two people who made 500 million from an online gambling service they founded.
Yeah,
So
it
that's exactly
launched
who you
its
want.
report remove tool for age verification in the UK. So this is their essentially positive, shall we say, reporting function as opposed to a voluntary reporting
Well,
function.
all of these digital identity firms are falling over themselves to fill this niche.
Hmm.
They are frothing at the mouth because they've been in like burning money for the last 5 years, a lot of them, to get these systems in place and create these control systems that will mesh with the new government framework. Because we all know that digital ID is coming, and this will be a massive nudge towards it.
Well, yeah, here you go. If the content is classified as criminal by IWF, who are, yeah, sorry, we'll go the one above here. Technology enables people under 18 to prove their age without needing ID documents or sharing personal data. Do you mind telling us how you do that? After
Yeah.
passing the age verification check, which relies on face analysis, that's how the
And that's not
CCP.
sharing. Yeah, that's not sharing personal
Yeah, just have
personal
just like letting some
information.
company own like a really high res 3D scan of your face so they can run it through their bizarre physiognomy algorithm and work out how old you are. They can anonymously report to the IWF nude images or videos of themselves that have been shared. Sorry, what?
This feels like the government is like catfishing people for child. Oh yeah. Just give the government the details of all the child porn that relates to you. We promise we won't blackmail you with it. God, they're gonna turn so many people into MI5 agents using this, aren't they?
If the
Like this
content
this
is
is
if the content is classified as criminal by the all right, so they're going to have the IWF independent child porn verifiers. Well,
yeah.
this one's a borderline case. We'll need to study it more. The Foundation creates a unique digital fingerprint known as a hash, which is then shared with tech firms to help prevent the files from being uploaded and shared further. So you're gonna
They're
get
gonna mint
children
your kiddie your face as an NFT.
as a yeah, you're gonna have like all the. It's not just enough that they're sharing kiddie porn amongst all the elites. It's that they need their kiddie porn to be NFTs that are also assets they can sell to other lower elites at some point. Instead of you waking up in like a bed in Mexico next to a dead 14-year-old hooker, what happens is you wake up one morning and you have a thing on your phone that says, "You bought Madeleine McCann NFT for £15 million."
Yeah. God.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah,
So
Report Remove
basically,
is hosted on the Childline website where young people can obtain further information alongside other self-help tools and the possibility of accessing emotional support from a counsellor. Where are the parents?
digital identity. Yeah, another donation there
Oh
saying
my
your digital
god.
identity will be the citizen. Will be yeah. Well, you're the thing it helps to live in society. Without it, you would die as a citizen. And literally, yeah. Basically, if your digital identity dies, you die in real life.
Yeah. We're
It
so
also means
proud to have created a way for children and young people to regain a sense of control and empowerment.
it's systematizing the child porn epidemic. It's not saying that we should stop these children using the technology. It's when they do use the technology and the technology ends up having them blackmailed that we will intervene as a completely trustworthy third party. There are no there's no power issues whatsoever here. No one within these organizations could be in a perfect position to abuse children.
I am Jack's 5-year-old decrypted facial hash key.
Oh God. Well, there was a whole thing about what was it? Leapfrog had a whole bunch of like computers that stored just decrypted pictures of kids' faces. That was retrieved by someone who accessed their website that was insecure, and quite literally, you could type file paths into the website and get pictures of kids out of it.
Oh, Jesus. I think this might
Uh,
actually, like, the digital ID stuff is bad enough, but I can't read this and not think that, like, we're going to have the government bureau for the designation of what is and isn't child pornography. Right.
Basically, yes.
Can we continue to a much more depressing but, like, different story? You've started off here, and I didn't quite get this straight away because I didn't look. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down this page. I'm going to select the next page, and I'm going to scroll down. And these are all articles from Dan Milmo, the Guardian's global technology editor. and tell me if you see anything, chat, okay? Just gonna keep going. Just gonna keep going.
Online safety bill.
Just
There's a brief must break.
yeah,
but
Musk break. Just gonna keep going.
it's all the same multiple times a day.
Just
But if you
gonna
if you go to
keep scrolling.
the next page is even more amazing because there's like 10 of them in a week. It's just all the same story.
NHS ransomware. Of course, he was involved in that bloody psyop too.
But this has become, if you Google online harms bill, or if you Google, sorry, online safety bill, this is what you are bombarded with. Those 3 positive results that I talked about, is the fear mongering around what is essentially the Joe Cox of the online safety bill, which
Yes.
is a girl called Molly Russell.
I mean, just
Who
the like Meta executive apologizes over inappropriate content seen by Molly Russell. So there's already the precedent set that Meta's executives are responsible for this.
yeah,
Psychiatrist unable to sleep after seeing material. Pinterest executive admits platform not safe. Molly Russell inquest delayed to ensure social media posts handled sensitively. Molly Russell inquest opens almost 5 years after teenager's death. So you're saying round about mid 2017, when we first had the online act that we started all this off with as well. That happened around about the same time. Molly Russell accessed ghetto of the online world, father says.
there's even more. There's a BBC article. There was a massive media blitz relating to this on September 30th. You'll see on the Guardian there were 3 articles in that day alone by this Dan Melmo.
Well, he
And
also
all of
wrote one
them,
the day before and about 6 the week prior.
yes, he wrote dozens of these articles over the space of 2 weeks.
I mean,
Like I said,
I mean,
multiple a day.
is this guy ever going to write about how, I don't know, maybe the Algerian gang of 4 people that butchered, molested, and stuffed a small girl in a suitcase probably used the internet to organise doing that? Nah, probably not.
Well, it's what's happened here is that all of these articles, all of them, I have checked, some of them in the headline, mention the online harms bill and mention it as an antidote to this. October 9th, delays to online safety bill will endanger young people, says Molly Russell's father. Molly Russell, coroner's calls for a review of children's social media access and talks about the online safety bill as a solution. Social media firms monetizing misery. Molly Russell, how family are helping shift narrative and online safety. They're just saying the quiet part loud there. There's also a BBC article here from September 30th.
Well, yeah, that's the one I've got open just now. Incredibly brave. In a statement, NSPCC Chief Executive Sir Peter Wanless said this should send shockwaves through Silicon Valley. Tech companies must expect to be held to account when they put the safety of children second to commercial decisions. The magnitude of this moment for children everywhere cannot be understated. Further reaction to the inquest finding came from the Prince of Wales. No parent should ever have to endure what Ian Russell and his family have been through, he said in a statement. They've been so incredibly brave. Online safety for our children and young people needs to be a prerequisite, not an afterthought.
Well, there's 2 quotes here. Her father is quoted as saying, "It's time for the government's online safety bill to urgent deliver its long-promised legislation." And the spokesman for, I think it's Stateford Digital Culture, Media and Sport, blah, 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 blah. We owe it to Molly's family to do everything in our power to stop this happening to others. Our online safety bill is the answer, and we thought it will use the full force of the law.
Well,
and through it, we'll use the full force of the law to make sure social media firms protect young people from horrendous pro-suicidal material. It is like it is disgusting how this is being used as a very deliberate lever. Here we have Mind, which is a huge mental health charity, saying Mind calls on UK government to urgently introduce the online safety bill in the wake of Molly Russell inquest. We have the NSPCC saying that it should be
Yeah,
introduced basically as a.
how did he even, a coroner has ruled that social media was a factor. So now you can be killed by social media.
Yes, and the parents don't want to
Was that
acknowledge that
was
they
that
were
was that
so.
last side dish of with COVID?
Yeah, this girl's father doesn't want to acknowledge that he was so alienated from his own child he didn't notice that she was for months on end routinely viewing suicide content on her unrestricted access to Instagram.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just going back to the other one here. Life sucking content. He said that Instagram and Pinterest use algorithms that resulted in there being binge periods of material, some of which was selected and provided from Molly without her having requested it. These binge periods are likely to have had a negative effect on Molly. Some of the content romanticized acts of self harm by young people on themselves. Other content sought to isolate and discourage discussions with those who may have been able to help. No, you're entirely correct. This is, for want of a better word, a man who's probably guilty, as you say, because he's so distanced from his child. He didn't even realise this happening or going on whatsoever. And then, oh, lo and behold, 5 years later after it, they're coming to him for comment after the whole thing's kicked
no,
off.
it's we must sense the internet. We must. I don't get what the provision of I don't get what all the provisions we've talked about have nothing to do with any of this.
Mm.
There is very, very little in the online safety bill that is directly related to child safety. It is purely a ratchet tool to have complete dominance over what can and can't be shared on the web in
Yeah,
Britain.
God, I've noticed the thing in the NSPCC website there. Molly's story, the 6 tests are backed by Ian Russell. Yeah, Molly by suicide after she was targeted with self-harm posts on social media. So now the algorithms are targeting us. Hmm.
This has become the push for it, though. This will
Hmm.
be when there is pushback and when the bill needs to be passed. Like I said, look at the absolute fire hose we showed earlier of the Guardian articles, though. 3 a day for a month on this specific topic, all positing the online safety bill, which is even its most ardent
Yeah, here's
supporters admitted is basically an online censorship bill.
a line again from this Peter Wanless. Industry inaction is fueling the staggering number of sex crimes against children, and the fallout from coronavirus has heightened the risks of abuse now and in the future. What's Do you mind expanding on that, Peter? How was it done so? Is it because you've forced children online en masse? You've created a problem that we then need to develop a solution for?
Funny that you have alienated and atomized an entire generation of children, and you have told their parents that they should have unrestricted internet access, and that's caused them to have poor mental health, and
Ugh.
that is somehow shocking. Like I said, it's the Joe Cox again. It is just this horrific, emotionally manipulative media martyr that they are
Hmm.
pushing out there. If you don't want the internet to be completely unrecognizable, you just want to kill. You just want teenagers to
Well,
kill themselves. You're a
here's something
terrible
for
person.
you. We can look at this as a worked example of why A's suggestion that ideology doesn't matter is entirely true.
Yes.
They will use pornography, online harms about radicalization, then it's online safety, and then it's a tragic story about Molly,
They no. Yeah.
and then further on now it's part of COVID and health misinformation.
Or
So
it's gonna fight bank
yeah, so
fraud.
really it's not about bank fraud and 9 other issues. It's about the fact that the government wants power over the tech providers, or they feel they don't have enough oversight over them.
This is a perfect example of why the ideology is post hoc.
Yeah.
There are so many measures in this, and it is attacked from so many angles. Some people have been joking, "Oh, it's anti-porn, it's based." We'll get to that later, because it's not. It really, really isn't. In fact, it codifies it in basically pornography access and law. But this is from unheard a bunch of wets, to be honest.
Mm.
Um, but the health misinformation, the latest addition to the online safety bill. The Online Safety Bill, a census charter, which has been so long in the making, the ratcheting effect is happening in real time.
Yeah, it's
The
see
SMPs
the. Have you noticed the one before that though? Got this Bill Nye the Science Guy in the fucking picture. Health-related misinformation and disinformation will threaten to open a Pandora's box of censorship. You're a bit fucking late on that one, mate.
Well, they're also conceding the fact that there is health-related misinformation and disinformation, and that is the legitimate thing to talk about. I kind of
Well,
hate
notice
this
as well
stuff
that
'cause
this has been made an SNP and a Labour thing, when
yeah,
this is a bill that has on every single form been not instituted, but introduced by the Tory party. Is it not? Still there?
I'm sorry, I'm just flabbergasted by the fact they have an essay called "The Demonic Power of Oil." This is definitely a website that is not on your side. But again, you're right. They've turned it into a party political issue in which they are saying that this is about voting Tory. Really, that is the subtext when it talks about Labour and the SNP. This is an establishment wide push, and nobody is immune from it. Everybody wants it. Nobody really is going to attempt to stop it because it's in everybody's interest. They've laid out an amendment to include health-related misinformation and disinformation. The problem is that there's so many aspects to this that if
Oh god, yeah. Here's I'm just gonna skip right to the bottom, the third last paragraph. This approach is a direct threat to the epistemic process so central to the free and open development of knowledge and ideas in liberal democracies. The fact that not even academics can escape this kind of truth arbitration speaks volumes. Proponents of the online safety bill perform mental gymnastics in trying to defend the legislation by arguing that hard and soft censorship is already happening online. They fail to provide how an approach which sees the state support these systems and even designate some categories of free speech as harmful will do anything but compound this issue. Ugh. Think about my democracy.
Yeah, this we just need to have a functioning liberal. This isn't a functioning liberal democracy. I remember the '90s, guys. This is the again the return to Fresh Prince argument almost. It's just that we need to get back to our principles as a liberal democracy. But that didn't lead us here, did it?
And then we've got a thing from Full Fact here: the online safety bill and misinformation. What you need to know. And it seems like this is basically a compendium of everything that we've basically talked about, but for like slightly high level normies and managerialists. And they also have their own thing here, the tackling online misinformation in an open society, which is what they've named the report.
We might have to do a separate stream just on that because that is amazing.
Which seems to be a direct partner of the online safety bill. It directly references so many times, and it is essentially we could probably get further into the Nuffield Foundation and other stuff when we have a look at this in full. But I found the points earlier on were hilarious. Point 4, actively look for harmful information vacuums and fill them. It's like we're going to provide the harmful information.
We're going to provide the harm. If there's no harm, we're going to provide it.
But yeah, this is, again, Joe, I'll actually probably chuck the link for this in the chat.
For those of you who don't know, Full Fact is Le Eben I verified it website. It is one of the fact checkers. It's one of the don't trust your lying eyes websites. It's one of the more popular ones, but it's one of the ones that has more of a remit in the UK. Full Fact is the de facto UK fact checker, and you're right, it does get used in official government policy. It's basically the fact checker equivalent of Hope Not Hate.
Yeah.
Well, here I'll just read it. Does the online say this is prior to some of the updates we'll see later? This is prior to the health misinformation update, and this is prior to what we'll see later, which is the Maputin update. Because this was written, it doesn't actually say when this was written, which is annoying, but it references it being proposed in March. So I reckon this was written sometime after its proposal in March or April, but before July, because it has a link to their online safety bill July 2022, which does talk about some of these updates. So they begin by the second paragraph begins by
Sorry,
saying.
if you look at the bottom of the Full Fact report, it says published by Full Fact, February 2022, which means they got
Okay,
a read at the bill before it was fully out.
they did, yes. Does the online safety bill do enough to protect us from harm? Bad information ruins lives. The online safety bill should be a pivotal moment in the way we tackle the harms caused by mis and disinformation and safeguard freedom of expression. As it stands, the bill falls short of the government's aim to make the UK the safest place to be online and leaves the public vulnerable and exposed to online harms. There is currently no credible plan to tackle the harms from online mis and disinformation through the bill. Presently, the only reference to misinformation in the online safety bill is about setting up a committee to advise Ofcom. So it is mentioned, and basically Ofcom's going to hand wave it later, but they want more specificity now. They want it to be ratcheted up now. The government intends to set out what it thinks is legal but harmful content later on in secondary legislation, which is very irregular. It's basically doing the COVID play there. But right now, this will only involve making the biggest internet companies decide what kind of harms are allowed on their platforms, and that they set out how they will tackle them. It's not clear if this will include harmful misinformation, disinformation, including health misinformation, which at the behest of Full Fact, it seems, was included at the committee stage and is currently in the bill. How can it be strengthened? Protects from bad information. I now report tackling online misinformation in an open society, which nakedly references both the Open Society Foundation and Karl Popper in general. It's like neoliberalism writ large. Set out strong provisions in legislation for tackling harmful misinformation, protect freedom of expression whilst tackling harmful misinformation online. Again, it's a hand wave. Strengthen the legislation to help everyone be more resilient to bad information. This includes a new media literacy duty fit for the digital era and ensuring that Ofcom sets out a plan for delivering it, as well as giving the regulator responsibility for researching the harms caused by misinformation. So basically, there's going to have to be mass propaganda because of this. How to get involved, basically telling, contact your MP and tell them to censor the internet. And partially in response to this and partially in response to just the current thing, the next thing added to the bill, I think just after the medical misinformation stuff was added to the bill, was internet safety laws strengthened to fight Russian hostile state disinformation. Foreign interference to be designated a priority offense under the online safety bill. So if you retweet or tweet a Russia Today article that has been blocked in the UK, if you like snip part of it, you could be arrested under these proposals.
Nothing beyond online safety bill, nothing without it, or whatever it is.
So there's so much stuff here, and the bill, the actual passage in the bill, I don't have time to read it. It says any misinformation or disinformation, so that has now been included in the bill. That this will cover what is considered a legal but
There's
harmful
the
act.
Security Minister Damien Hines, who was part of this bill years ago as well. Online information operations are now a core part of the state threats activity. The aim can be variously to spread untruths, confuse, undermine confidence in democracy, or sow division in society.
They're in black and white.
Yep.
Undermine confidence in democracy. So you are by law not allowed to our democratization series might legitimately become a legal view in the UK.
Whoops.
And it viewed from this legislation, a lot of our content will become at least in a legal grey area, which is I don't know. It kind of is already maybe because of how broad many of the acts of parliament are in terms of communications. But this will make it not only de facto but de jure illegal.
That is always the problem. Is it's not just about the act of parliament. It takes someone in the position of power to decide just to screw you over that day. I mean, that's what happened with me with the whole thing with my university and hate speech on Twitter and this, that, and the next thing. That it wasn't just I posted stuff on Twitter and the university has these rules and Police Scotland has this and that, and the next legislation, it required one person who had the ability to file those reports from the university to the police and link it all up and put it together. That's why at the moment we're all right, I suppose, content wise, because one, we don't put it out too much. Everything we're talking about, we couch it in loads of language, and we don't go out targeting people specifically. So we've got no reason to have that come back on us. But
No, we talk about
all it
higher
requires
level
is one day
conversations.
for someone at the YouTube offices to just decide, screw these people, let's report them to Ofcom.
Well, all it takes is that they get a better speech recognition and reading algorithm, and some computer somewhere picks up on some phrase that we've used that it uses as an identifying marker
Mm.
for dissident activity, and we get nixed.
Yeah, we get picked up for saying boomer truth regime or something.
Yeah. They'll anyone who mentions the populist delusion is going to end up in the boxcars, basically. One last thing you want to talk about though
Yeah, I find
is
this just incredibly interesting. I saw this the other day, and it makes you think about how do these big organizations actually deal with things like pornography? Because it's something I think about a lot more than I used to, really, and it's something I really should have sort of switched on to and been aware of. But at what point do we have to admit that Google, Instagram, and I know some people are already on this kind of stuff, but for those who aren't, at some point you have to consider that Google, Meta, YouTube, all these different entities are actually pretty happy to show you pornography. And if anything,
well, they're extremely happy.
they're willing to serve you adverts on pages that are otherwise normal and PC or PG or whatever, but then serve you like essentially pornography adverts on them. If you've not got ad block and you go on any website that isn't full on like the Guardian or some massive thing, even on there sometimes you get it.
There's there's like memes about it.
But
There's
anyway,
like the shaking.
let's say let's say you're trying to take the compromised position where you're like, well, I don't want my kids to be on the internet. I don't want them on phones. But if they're going to school, they're going to need to have access to the internet to do schoolwork because, funnily enough, schoolwork is framed in such a way that you need access to the internet, believe it or not. So you might want to install software on Google that stops them either being able to or being accidentally confronted with pornography. Well, Google's decided you can't do that. Covenant eyes and accountability to you have been removed from the Google Play Store, and it's not just Google themselves that have done it, mind. Latest skirmish in the cancel culture wars, Google is booting apps for fighting porn addiction off its App Store. And a little noticed move last month, the internet behemoth removed from the Google Play Store. Google dropped them after journalists from Wired, a technology magazine, alleged that they violate Google's malware policy. I'm sure there's 1,006,000 other things in the Google Play Store. I mean, how many things can you get to download YouTube videos or rip MP3s or rip stuff off of Twitter? Pretty sure those would come under the same malware policy, but they'll never be banned. And they even go on to use this like horrendous language. According to an article in Wired, the ungodly surveillance of anti-porn shameware apps. These two apps are part of a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem of so-called accountability apps that are marketed to both churches and parents as tools to police online activity. Well, yeah, of course they're marketed as that. They're actually marketed as something honest.
Well, that's what they are. They're not marketed towards children. They're making it sound like people are putting these on people's devices without them knowing about it.
Yeah, because
Whereas that's not the
they go into
case.
all sort of other stuff about talking about conversion therapy, this, that, and next thing. And I don't, these are all other valid discussions. But the thing that really makes me think is like, Google themselves have weighed in on whether or not you can block porn on their platform, and they've said no.
Yeah. Well, it's not. These aren't even. They don't even block it fully. It's what it does is it allows somebody else to access your internet history if you feel that you're in a position in which you literally like you cannot control yourself, and it allows somebody to be, hey buddy, what are you doing, basically.
Yeah.
If these kind of apps existed for, say, self-harm content, let's say that Molly What's her face, her dad had installed this app on her
Yeah,
phone.
you've watched 4 hours of wrist slashing content today. Don't you think that's a bit much?
It might allow them to see if there was, say, a problem with somebody's internet use. It surely the idea that these are spying apps creates an idea that this is something that is used by like abusive
Yeah,
people.
Ben Gale in the chat's hit the nail on the head. How dare you police what your children watch? That is our job.
This
Exactly.
isn't this isn't what you can just set up firewalls and you can just set up adult filters.
Mm.
That is what people do for kids. This is not meant for kids. These apps are primarily marketed towards young men in their 20s, do not feel they have control over themselves and would like somebody else to intervene in their
Well,
lives.
that's why they don't need this stuff. What they need is the government to scan their face and make them feel empowered while they engage in sexually selling themselves on the internet.
It is again, a lot of the people, oh, it's based, it's at least it's anti-porn, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's very, very pro-porn. In fact, it's sheltering the porn industry after things like the Pornhub sex trafficking scandals and things like that. What it does is it codifies as a therapeutic part of the state the idea that as long as we have these surveillance tools and these ID fig leaves, that the government will take out of people's hands the responsibility to parent their own children to the degree that they can blame an Instagram algorithm for a suicide. The machine did it.
Mm.
So we must we're not going to get rid of the machine. There's not a debate about smartphone access for teenagers. That's not the debate here.
No.
The debate here is about wholesale censorship of the internet by a centralized, empowered body that has teeth to fine people unless they listen to the minutiae of its regulatory policies. The discussion here, if this was genuine in any way, would be around unfettered smartphone access for children. But that's not the debate we're allowed to have.
Well, no,
And if you have that debate, you are some sort of like Christian nationalist nutjob who wants to surveil your kids.
Well, see, that's the way I've always thought about it. Is the issue, in the terms that we should be coming from it, is always that unfettered access to the internet, even access to the internet, maybe we could argue, is child abuse. You know,
Yes.
you wouldn't just like leave a graphic novel version of like 120 Days of Sodom lying about your house. You know, it's not, on the bottom shelves with a sticker saying "read me" on it, but you're not gonna just like put it on a bookshelf and leave it there, are you? It sounds like a weird example to bring up, but like, of course they're gonna come across this stuff. It's everywhere. If anything, you'd be safer having copies of bloody 120 Days of Sodom in your house because the kids would never read it, but they'll find stuff 10 times worse on bloody TikTok or wherever it is that they're otherwise looking at normal content. I say normal content, but air quotes around that. Oh, right. Shall we wrap this one up then?
Yes. I'm running out of scrump gas here.
Oh my, we've covered a horrendous amount of stuff there.
We have. There might be a follow-up stream to this at some point. We are
Yes.
planning Thursday to maybe do an update on the Ukraine situation,
Mm.
or just geopolitics in general.
Well, yeah, I would like to look at it from as Jonathan Bowden would say, what has anything to do with, or what if anything to do with this has of any interest to us as the British people.
Yes.
And sort of go off the things we actually know for sure component of it.
Yes, and most of it is going to be, I want to put forward my thesis that a lot of this is not big power politics. A lot of this is for us. It's a domestic audience thing.
Mm.
And the people who view this as some kind of like grand strategy game in their minds have completely allowed it to invade their brain pan. Like it's living rent free in a lot of people's heads, supposedly on the right, and it shouldn't be.
Mm.
I think that's a good angle to tackle it from. So we're going to try and do a bit again, like we do, a bit of an alternative take. But hopefully this wasn't too depressing. And a lot of people were like, "Oh God, why do you highlight these miserable things?" But most people don't. One, they don't know this bill exists really, and two, they don't know its content and they don't know its lineage. Its lineage is the important part, and we're hoping to try and give people the information they need to navigate things as they move forward, because this bill is so worrying. Yes, you should go and back things up. You should go and anything that you think might be removed by this bill, go and get a hard copy of it.
Well,
I've been doing it.
Not just that, I would say as well, like we did last week, when it comes to these streams where we're just churning through all this stuff, please do share it around, not just for our sake, but for the sake of everyone else who, as you say, isn't aware of this stuff. I mean, the more people that know about that, again, it's one of the reasons why we always focus on this stuff. The more people that know about it, the more singular the focus can be on either tracking it or, in some sense, combating it or getting ourselves out of the way of it. Because if we don't know
Yes.
what it is and we don't know what's happening, then there's no point planning any sort of action because you're just jumping at shadows or whatever. I'll also mention once again, whilst I've got a decent bit of viewers compared to the start of the show, our Nomos London event will be on the 28th and 29th of this month. So be there or be square. I might quickly get up the stupid image I put on Twitter earlier on because I just found it funny. I say Twitter. That wasn't me. It was someone else called Evelyn that put it on Twitter, I promise.
It was your intern. We have a media intern.
Yeah, that was it. The admin.
The admin. We've got an admin person. Yeah, we've hired an admin person with the
I need to get my meme up.
$150 a month we get with this channel. Lee gets me very generous today, but mostly glowy because he can't. I don't know. Have you got a financially secure situation there, Chloe? I sometimes worry about the amount you contribute. But it's again, thank you for the donation. Thank you for coming today. Yes, I'm an old computer. I'm illiterate. I use a lot of cloud storage. Fair enough. That's a good one. No, that's funny. That's stupid. It's October. Oh no, people didn't realize.
See,
That's a good one.
it wasn't until I started making this that I realized whoever's the graphic artist that like drew this never considered
Yeah.
the fact that how the hell you might fit all of September in this section here.
That's pretty good.
Oh,
But yeah,
right.
that's
Anyway,
our final show. Anyway, thank you for coming, guys. I will make
I
sure
will
we have
say
extensive show.
one last thing. Yiz has mentioned in the chat she'll be streaming in 90 minutes or so so any Americans or insomniacs in the audience, please do go and visit there.
Yes, I will actually try and find her YouTube channel. Here we go. I'll put that in the chat here. We'll do a handoff. Thank you. We should try and do those. So that's Yiz's YouTube channel. Do go over there if you feel like watching more content, if you're in that kind of time zone. I will be putting out extensive show notes as a community post and in the top comment of this video.
Yeah,
So if you're watching this in the VOD, it will be there.
I will copy and post that onto the Telegram as well tomorrow. I might give it a quick edit so it's slightly more formulated into a post that works for there. But yes,
Please do, and I will use that one then if you want to edit it tomorrow. So I'll do that tomorrow when it's a bit more in shape. But again, thank you very much for coming and have a good evening.